Unit 1, SLTs 21 to 23, are about congruent figures and corresponding parts of different shapes. First, a vocabulary review. Rigid transformations. Are transformations that preserve, so keep the same, that means. They preserve distance and angles. The rigid transformations are reflections, rotations, and translations. Congruent figures have the same size and shape. Congruent figures also will have corresponding, which means directly related, angles and side lengths. So what's important here is that they have the same angles and side lengths that are congruent as well. So now if we look here at these two triangles, ABC and DEF, we can see that AB is the same length as DE, BC is the same length as EF, and CA is the same length as FD. And then it says that this angle is 24. So which angle over here is also 24 degrees? And it's right here, this angle. This angle is also 24 degrees. So look at the two triangles in the image to the right, and it's asking if the two triangles are congruent and to explain. So if we look at these two triangles, we have angle A is 90 degrees, angle F is 90 degrees, B is 53 degrees, so is E, and G is 37. So let's look at the lengths now. So from F to G, from the 90-degree angle to the 37-degree angle, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 units long. So from the 90-degree angle to the 37-degree angle, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 units long. Same with the 53 to 90, that's 1, 2, 3 here, and it's 1, 2, 3 there. So that means that these two triangles are congruent. So yes, because both triangles have corresponding side lengths and angles. Then congruent sides and angles are marked using tick marks and arcs. If two sides are congruent, you mark them with one tick mark. If another two sides are congruent, you mark them with two tick marks. So you can, and so on. So you can see over here that this is marked with one tick mark. So those two lines are congruent. This is marked with 2. So that means those two are congruent. And this is marked with 3. So those 3 are congruent. Those 2 are congruent. And then if two angles are congruent, you mark them with one arc. So you can see here, this angle is marked with one arc. That angle is marked with one arc. If another two angles are congruent, you mark them with 2 arcs. So that's why these angles are marked with 2 over here. And so on. So this one's marked with 3. Sometimes I want you to be aware of it that angles can be marked with arcs and tick marks, which can be confusing, but if you see an angle like this, and then you see that the next angle has a tick mark inside of it like that, and then this one, oops, has 2 tick marks in it, that means that the ones with 2 tick marks are congruent to each other, the one with 1 tick mark is congruent to each other, and the one with no tick marks are congruent to each other. So instead of doing like a double arc, they would do an arc with 2 lines in it. So now we're going to name the congruent sides and angles in these triangles. If we look at triangle ABC, angle B is congruent to angle E because they both have 1 arc. Angle A is congruent to angle D, and angle C is congruent to angle F. Now when we look at the line segments, we have to do it in the right order. So if it says line segment AB, we look and we see that A has 2 arcs. So we know that AB and ED are the same, but which order is it? It's wherever it started. So it started the 2 arcs here. We have to start at the 2 arcs there. So line segment AB is congruent to line segment DE. And then line segment CA is congruent to line segment FD. And line segment BC is congruent to line segment EF. Okay, you don't need a drawing though when it comes to naming congruent sides and angles in 2 triangles. A congruent statement, such as triangle JKL is congruent to triangle PQR, and order does matter in this. So the corresponding angles here, we look at the order that it's written in. So angle J is congruent to angle P. Angle K is congruent to angle Q. And angle L is congruent to angle R. So I'm just looking at the order here. We can also do corresponding sides from just a congruent statement. Side JK is congruent to side PQ. Side KL is congruent to side QR. And side LJ is congruent to side RP. Now we're looking at these 2 triangles to the left. And it says, explain why the following triangles are congruent in terms of rigid transformations. So that means we're going to talk about the transformation that it does. So triangle ABC is, let's see, it's reflected over the x-axis, then translated one unit right. So that means that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And then it says, explain why the triangles are congruent in terms of corresponding sides and angles. And that just means the same thing. We're going to count from 56-degree angle to the 90-degree angle, it's 2. 56 to 90 here is 2. 34 to 90 is 1, 2, 3. 34 to 90 is 1, 2, 3. So if we look, all side lengths and angles are congruent. And then it says name the congruent sides and angles. So, for example, angle A is congruent to angle D. Angle C is congruent to angle E. And angle B is congruent to angle F. And then also the sides, so side CA is congruent to side ED. Make sure you're doing it in the right order. CB is congruent to EF. And BA is congruent to FD. So now go and grab the practice paper for SLTs 21 to 23, and when you're finished, hand it in for classwork points.